All right, let's welcome into Straight Fire a new face. We've spoken before, but we've never had him on the podcast. But I like these guys that are up and coming in the gambling space. And I don't know, a few years ago, this guy reached out to me. Hey, I'm doing an article. Can I get your pick? And I was like, oh, sure, why not? And then I followed him, and he's got good content. So for NFL Week 10, let's bring in Ben Fawkes, Yahoo Sports. I hope I didn't butcher your name there, Ben. How you doing, man?
No, you crushed it, man. I
All
think
right.
we met a long, long time ago, very briefly at a Westgate Super Contest weekend.
Oh, yeah. I've been
I
failing at
mean, it
that for many
was
years. Yeah.
2012 or something,
Oh,
a long,
wow.
long time ago. But
Yeah, so I had pivoted to Circa in recent years, but has it been, well,
mhm,
geez, have I been doing that for that long? I guess I've
probably,
lost a lot of
yeah,
money when you do when you calculate the
right.
$1,500 buy-in. But I feel like I'm close every year. This year, last week kind of sucked 2 and 3. But so Ben, yeah, obviously the gambling space has been exploding for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. Um, I'm just curious. What talk to us about your origin story? How you got interested in gambling? I don't know. Was it a family thing? Just numbers guy, data scientist. Tell us your origin story.
Yeah, I mean, I think growing up in Brooklyn, I've always liked to say that your experience gambling a little bit, you're around
Mhm.
gambling always. And so I think kind of probably in high school, you're starting hearing about like point spreads, the NFL, and people have pools. And so that was kind of the first, I guess, interaction with it. And obviously kind of in college. I kind of fell into gambling a little bit. Like I was econ psych in school, which is
Mm.
kind of the intersection, I think, of gambling, and had started at ESPN. I had an internship and then kind of started again after college. And Chad Millman, they basically needed somebody to edit betting content and edit his podcast. And so I raised my hand because I think as any young person in the industry, you should raise your hand and try and do as much as you can possibly do. And kind of learned about it that way. And was like, wow, this is really interesting. That's it. That was back in 2010. So a long time ago. But to me, gambling was just this kind of like not secret society, right? But hush hush. Everyone has a nickname. Like people who are in the know kind of know about it. And, the spreads, you always saw them in like the daily news. And some people knew what they meant, some people didn't. Why are some names capitalized for teams? Why are they not? So it was like this puzzle kind of to solve, I think, for the general public. And certain people knew about it, certain people didn't, and it was very taboo. And then certainly slowly through ESPN, and we eventually launched the betting section, ESPN Chalk in 2014, right before the Adam Silver op-ed in the New York Times, which was very good timing, and then
Yeah.
kind of kept, working on it through eventually, Daily Wager. And then so I was at ESPN for 10 years, left in 2020 and went out to VSiN, the Vegas Stats Information Network out in Vegas and was their VP of digital content. So went from a very big company where sports betting is a small piece, obviously growing to a company that's a 24/7 sports betting media company,
Mm.
and was there for a couple years, and then now back in New Jersey at Yahoo, which I started in March.
Yeah, congratulations on that move. I am just curious, like we were pre-COVID, we'll just use that as a like a line of demarcation.
Mhm.
There wasn't much gambling on screens, right? Now when you see a bug, we're talking about something on the herd, the line is there for the game. And that's pretty much on ESPN, Fox, everywhere. I mean, we've kind of it's gone fast. No, it kind of came out. I don't want to say came out of nowhere because I had started a podcast at Fox for gambling in like 2017, and they were like, "Yeah, we don't know how to monetize this." I was like,
Right.
"Guys, do you
Yeah.
see what's coming?" One of those deals.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think you always, no matter where you are and what idea you have, you always need someone a little higher to believe in it, right? And I
Mhm.
think especially at larger companies, someone has to stick their neck out and say, hey, this is an idea. We want to be ahead of this as opposed to necessarily reactionary. So I think once the Supreme Court legalized it, a lot of things that had already been being discussed at companies and the leagues, as you saw, they were able to kind of flip a switch much quicker than if it was, wow, this came out of nowhere, right? Because it took a while for the New Jersey case to work its way through the courts. Then the Supreme Court took it. Then once they actually heard it, it was another 6 months until they actually, rendered a
Mhm.
decision. And then obviously once states started, it takes a while to actually implement it. So it's kind of a slower build. But to your point, I think a lot of casinos thought, hey, we're going to be the winners in this space because everybody knows these different casino brands. When in reality, it's a technology play, right? And whoever
Mm.
has the best app, the best promos, the quickest to deposit and withdraw is going to be the winners. And I think that's why we've seen some of the, bigger companies like a DraftKings and a FanDuel take a lead because they had those lists from Daily Fantasy Sports years
Mhm.
ago before sports betting was legal, and they invested more in the technology. And so when you went into these different states, all of a sudden they had this app that was much better than these legacy kind of casino brands, and they took over some of those states. In New Jersey, I think it's probably like 95% of the handle is mobile, right? It's not like
Wow.
legalized sports betting. People are now driving to Atlantic City to place their bets. They're on their couch
Yeah.
or they're at work or they're wherever they are. Previously when New Jersey was legal, New York wasn't, people were, taking the PATH train to Hoboken or driving
Mm.
over, the GW Bridge to place their bets and then go back to New York. So it is really all, mobile. There's certainly an argument whether that's a good thing or a bad thing with responsible gaming and addiction and
Yeah.
all that. But definitely that is where certainly we've gone. And I think COVID as well was a real accelerant, just people at
Yeah.
home looking for things to do, all of a sudden things to bet on. For those of us like myself, potentially invest in sports cards, some other things like people were looking to spend money on things. And I think betting was certainly one that accelerated kind of the growth that we've seen too.
Yeah, so one of the things I like that you do is you put out the bet percentages and the handle on some of these games. So, for instance, we could take this week. I don't know if you want to pick a game, but like let's just go Carolina, New Orleans. Ordinarily, this game is irrelevant. The New Orleans Saints are awful. The rookie quarterback Shook looks lost. They don't have their center. It's a disaster. Carolina is favored by 5.5, which is an obscene number for a team that's not very good, but did just beat the Packers when I'm sure a lot of public gamblers had the Packers. In this game, do you see like the public loaded up on Carolina, or is this just such a low bet game that it doesn't matter? Or, and I know sometimes you'll say like 78% on Carolina, but was that at Carolina at -4, 4.5, 5, 5.5?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's why I think all the kind of betting splits. I guess I would take a step back. I think gambling content is very difficult in general, right? Just it really depends who your audience is, what they're looking for, and you kind of get caught in a lot of a catch-22. Not to get too inside baseball, right? But if you're giving out a pick and then the line's moving off of your pick, well, that's good because you're moving the market, but also then people aren't getting the pick at that number. So they're saying, hey, if you give out Seahawks -6 and now it's -7, okay, that's a totally different line.
100%.
And so same thing with betting splits, right? The information that we get that sportsbooks give out is the aggregate, right? So at
Ah,
all of the numbers, it's 78% of the bets, let's say, on the Seahawks. Again, making up that number. I can look it up in a second, but that's at all the different numbers, including the line moves. They're not
mm.
giving away, hey, at 6, this is what the handle and splits were. They obviously have that on the back end. They're not giving that
Do you
away
think? Do
yet.
you think they should, Ben?
I think at some point, right? Because to a certain extent, you're still not necessarily revealing the sharp action, right? Which is where probably the line is moving. Now, there's a lot of reasons lines move, sharp action, injuries, obviously for totals, weather, other things like that, potentially head coaches, referees. Like there's a lot of reasons that lines move. I don't think you can necessarily pinpoint exactly why it is if they give that. I generally think the more information, the more transparency is better. And right, sportsbooks like giving this away because they don't think they're losing any information. That's why they're giving it away,
Right.
right? If
They're
they
not going
thought
to
it was
give
going to
away.
cost them
Right.
money, then they wouldn't be giving it away publicly. So I think it's a good data point to use. That's why I tell people like, hey, as part of your handicapping, this is one thing you potentially could use. If you want to totally ignore it, that's also totally fine. To each his own. I think it's just an interesting point. And generally, over the long term, I do think it is fair that the public is going to lose, right? So last
Mm.
week, the Lions were just every sports book, it was 80%, 85% of the bets
Mhm.
and the money on the Lions to cover against the Vikings. Obviously, they come nowhere close to threatening to cover and lose the game outright. So it's not always going to be a one-to-one for that. We've especially seen that in college this year, where
Yeah.
BetMGM, I send out kind of the top 5 by ticket count, which is the most bet games. And those are some insane number where they're, like 12 and 30, right? So like if you're betting against those, you're going 30 and 12. It's
Yeah.
not always going to be like that. It's not as simple as fade the public, but I just think it's another interesting data point, certainly to have.
Yeah.
And to your point in the Saints game, like I think that's where to me, some of those interesting storylines come up. Whether or not it's actionable is another story. But like I tweeted out, like the Panthers, they haven't won a game as a favorite since 2021, right? They're 0 and 10 in their last 10 games as a favorite. Obviously, not all those are with Bryce Young and the same coaching staff and all those things. But
Yeah.
in general, the Panthers as a favorite don't do well. Now they haven't played a bad Saints team with a rookie quarterback who they didn't feel good enough to start at the beginning of the season and kind of like, all right, the
Yeah.
season's over. We're tossing him in. But that is to your point. If you're ever going to take the Panthers in Survivor, this is probably the week. But also, do
Wow.
you want the following week on Sunday when the Panthers lose 17 to 13 and go, wow, I just spent my
Yeah.
potential $1,000 in Circa or wherever else on,
The Carolina
going
Panthers and
right
Bryce
on the
Young. Yeah.
Panthers.
That's
So
big favorites. Yeah.
yeah, so it's certainly a balance. But yes, I think the public. I'll look that up while we're talking. But I think you'll see the public load up right now at one book, 74% of bets,
Yeah.
77% of the money on the Panthers. So I think there'll be a team the public is getting behind this
So,
week, and obviously they just
yeah,
beat the Packers, so the public likes to
100%. Yeah.
bet what they see last.
Do you think that there's a couple places that post this info, right? Somebody told me VSiN does an Action
Mhm.
Network, but then I went to go look for it and it's behind a paywall. You have to like pay for that information. So it is interesting. So they're willing to sell it, but they give it to you for free to put out on social media. What do you think that's about?
So I will say, since obviously I was involved in one of those at VSiN,
Yeah.
it is something that people find valuable. I will say that DraftKings does have a site for free that you
Oh,
can,
okay.
yeah, that you can have. Now I wouldn't say it's as pretty as VSiN's and as organized, but it is all there for that. And then certainly BetMGM puts out a ton of information through John Ewing, and they obviously have a lot of things on Twitter. So they don't have, I believe, a website dedicated to all of that information. But I'd say they probably put out the most information publicly in terms of multiple sports, most bet, handle, props, all those types of things.
Yeah, in an arms race, which is what this is, you want to be out there as much as possible. I'm surprised they don't have someone dedicated to pushing everything out, the more information than our competitors, and then you just get more eyeballs on it. But let me go. So the next step, I've been doing this long enough that you know the trap spots when you see them, right? Carolina last week against Green Bay, perfect trap spot. I mean, I fell for it anyway, but you knew the
Right.
Packers facing Aaron Rodgers, then Carolina, then the Eagles. Boom, big time trap spot. And there's these littered throughout, but those are the old school ways of looking at things. They're already baked into the line, right? Because it's already out there. What do you think are some newfangled things that people are doing that maybe perhaps aren't as well known and aren't as baked into the line yet as some of these old school techniques? Hey, team fires a coach, you bet that team that just fired the coach the next week. That kind of thing.
It's a great question. I wish I had more of them because I think I'd probably have some more dollars in my pocket.
Yes.
But I think, yeah, ultimately, as you kind of said, most of the things or the angles we kind of tend to think of are probably baked into the line. I do
Mhm.
think we probably don't. I think there's probably more for the general public to do in terms of rest advantage and disadvantage, right? And just those teams seeing like, hey, this week, for example, the Ravens playing the Vikings, the Ravens are off of Thursday night, right? So they have kind of a mini bye or
Mhm.
potentially teams coming off of a bye, right? We saw this where who was it? The Browns against the Steelers, right? Where the
Brutal spot.
Browns,
Yeah.
right, a brutal scheduling spot coming off of a game in Europe, didn't take their bye, facing the Steelers, who were coming off of a bye.
Yeah.
And obviously, they'd been to Europe, but they had, 2 weeks to recover. So those types of things I think are difficult to quantify. I'd say the same thing probably with totals a bit. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but in terms of the new rules, right, and seeing how that was playing out, I think early in the season, whenever there's a rule change or something like that, it's essentially introducing variance, and that any variance is going to be opportunity for gamblers, right? If you know kind of how to see it. I think we weren't sure exactly how that would play out into, are there more returns? If there are fewer returns, but the ball's coming out to the 35-yard line, does that increase scoring? And so I
Hmm.
think early on we did see that increased scoring. I think it's leveled out a bit. But those are the types of things that I think aren't those year-to-year changes that aren't necessarily baked in. And probably I'd say some things with field goal kicking too. It just, from seeing it, it just seems like kickers are better and
Yeah.
are able to, set the Cowboys, they're setting up at the 40-yard line. They're like within range for Brandon
Mhm.
Aubrey. So just knowing there are a lot of other things that I think different teams are planning for. That's one. And I guess one as well. People specifically look at things even like the first quarter, right? And knowing which team, whether they win or lose the coin flip, are they more likely to receive or defer, right? And so then in the first quarter, maybe they get two possessions, whereas the other team gets one. And so
Mhm.
depending on the team, you can bet that team, obviously, that gets two possessions in the first quarter, you have a lot better chance to cover any number. So there's some small things like that. And again, that opposite would happen in the second half spread versus some of those bigger, like larger trends. But in general,
Mhm.
to your point, the like trap spots and things like that are pretty much baked in.
All right, before we get to the Week 10 NFL, let me just ask you this. I think you said you were an econ psych major, right?
Yep.
Okay. Um,
I'm
every
scared what
time,
this question is going to be now.
well, not really. I mean, it's a psychology of gambling in men. So,
Hmm.
obviously having the podcast going on the herd every day, guys are coming up to me talking bets, and anytime they're like, "Hey, I saw your picks. I parlayed." And that's all they want to talk about. All these guys just
Hmm.
all they want to do is parlay and same game parlay. And I try to tell them, I'm like, guys, that's insane. Like so many things can go wrong to blow up your bet. Why don't you just do, almost like station to station baseball as opposed to going up and going for the big swing? And the more people I talk to, it's just like, oh, that's all anybody wants to do is parlay picks and try to hit some grand slam. And I'm like, what's wrong with, hey man, you like this side? You've done the research. Just go to the side. And they're like, I'm not really into that. I want the home run. Have you like noticed this in talking to gamblers and seeing stuff online and talking to people?
Yeah, I think a big thing I always kind of try and put forth to people is like, what is your, it sounds simple, but like, what is your why? Why are you gambling, right? Are you
Mm,
gambling to make money? Are you gambling because you're smarter than the bookmaker? Are you in some picks pool with your friends and you want to do better than they do? It generally is not going to be a get rich quick scheme or a money maker. And so I think as Americans, we like to bet small amounts to win large amounts. It's why the
yeah.
lottery is so popular.
Oh yeah.
I would equate it a little bit to like if you have $100, are you more likely to put it in some alternative, to
Crypto.
Bitcoin, or are you
Yeah.
more likely to put it in a money market, right, and grow it at 3 or 4%? One of them is like going to make money, but a very slow and steady amount. And the other probably is going to lose a lot of money, might make a lot of money. You're not really sure, but you're like, oh, it's $100. Who cares? And so I think for a lot of people, hopefully, with the amount that they're putting in gambling, they're saying, hey, this is entertainment. I'd rather bet the 16 parlay and then I have a great story at the end if it happens. Or as is more likely, I'll win four, have some horrible loss on the fifth leg, and then
Mm.
I also have a great story. I just don't win any money. But I think it's just that same way that I tell people the same thing. Like everyone does the same thing with parlays. You go, all right, I love this leg. That can't lose. I love this leg. That's winner. I love this leg. Oh, that's definite. And then you put three more legs in. Why don't you just do the first three that you think are already winners, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
just do two. Like everyone has some cutoff in their mind that's like, and shows do it too, right? All right, it's got to be under, minus 120 or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
why not just, it could be minus 200. Like you're not going to win as much money. You might win though. So it's just not how people's psychology, I think, is. People like to have that giant win. It's
Mhm.
not as exciting to win a small amount of money. And then I think they probably feel worse if it's like, hey, I had a money line parlay of, three favorites and one of them lost. And even if I won, I bet $50, I would have only won $10. So
Yeah,
it's like I
that's
feel even
even
worse.
dumber. Yeah.
Eh,
I mean,
totally.
it's a
But
little depressing and sad. And again, we're all at different stations in life. Bottom line, if that's what you're looking to do, I need to bet to make a lot of money. Like I would highly suggest get the hell out. But At the same time, like, what's wrong with? I mean, a couple weeks ago, Ben, I think I went something like, college and NFL was like 9-8. And I'm the idiot who doesn't do the exact same unit for every bet. Some I feel more confident in. You know how that game
Yeah.
works, which is
Hmm.
stupid, but that's how I operate. And I think it was like plus like 107. And I'm like, oh, I'll take it. It's positive. It's green. I'll take the plus 107 as opposed to the minus 500 because you only made two bets and they were Hail Mary parlays. And
Hmm.
I try to tell people that. And again, some people you just can't help. That's what they're going to do. That's how they're wired. But when you look to this week in week 10, you know, there's been a couple great teaser weeks. This to me doesn't strike me as a teaser week. I'm just going to toss out a game that I'm looking at as a dog because there aren't a lot of dogs that have been good the last few weeks. But the Miami Dolphins, I doubt this will hit 10 at 9.5. I know Josh Allen has dominated them. I know Miami just sold Phillips. They fired the GM. Miami is a sinking ship. That being said, the Buffalo Bills just won the Super Bowl last week. I don't know if you heard, taking down the Chiefs. And all is fine in Buffalo. Remember, they smashed the Panthers the week before. Um, I think I like the Dolphins getting 9.5. Now, I don't know if I have the cojones to play it in the Circa Millions, but are you seeing anything in that game that jumps out at you?
This to me is definitely, for me, I think stay away. There was some sharp action that pushed Buffalo up. I think it opened 8.5 at some books, pushed it up to 9.5. I want to say the Bills have won maybe like 7 of 8 against
Yep.
the Dolphins. They just kind of, I think they know how to defend Tua. It is one of those kind of like 80% of bets, 80% of money on the Bills, as you would expect. I think you probably are getting a little bit of an inflated line because of that teaser potential, right? It's 9.5 as opposed to maybe it's a little lower. But the Dolphins just, man, they are tough. Like they're getting a lot more points than you would think if you
Yeah.
just said, "Hey, what was this spread back in May?" Um, but I think it's difficult to know what you're going to get from a team that just kind of got they lost by on the scoreboard. I think it was what was it 28-6 against the Ravens. They were moving the ball up and down the field in the first half. Arguably should have been winning the game at halftime. They just kept shooting themselves in the foot. The question is, why would you think it might be any different against the Bills, who probably have a, I don't know, better defense than not like the Ravens defense has been lighting the world on fire either. So that's a tough one. I mean, it's a lot of points and it is
I
in
mean,
Miami.
I don't have the line from the last meeting. I think it was like double digits on the Thursday night football, and I'm
Yeah, I
pretty
think it
sure
was
Miami
10,
covered.
10.5. And the Dolphins covered and they
They did.
did move the ball up and down the field. And it was that late Tua pick six, I think, or interception
Right, that cost him. So,
that
like,
sealed it.
even if, yeah, I assume, maybe you could bet the Buffalo team total. I don't know what it is yet, but they're probably going to get to 30, 31. You're telling me Miami can't just get like a garbage time touchdown from Tua to Waddle, or I know Darren Waller's out. They don't have a lot of weapons, but remember, Ben, just a few weeks ago, Buffalo could not stop the run to save their life. And now,
Yeah.
because you beat Carolina and the Chiefs, all of a sudden, oh, Buffalo defense is awesome. And it's
And
just like,
Michael Hoyt out for the season as well, who was
yeah,
playing
that was a big
well.
loss. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, again, I don't love it. I'm not loading up on the Dolphins, that's for sure. But to me, that was one that kind of jumped out. And you've got to, again, you said that's probably an 80-20 split, public on Buffalo.
It is right now, which generally mean if it's this early and it's like that, that generally holds, towards the
Mm-hmm.
end. Again, we're only, we're still, I'd say early in the week where there's, let's just say 20% of the total that's bet, right? Most of it's going to be Saturday and then the majority Sunday morning of the public. But I think that you'll see the public saying, whoa, the Bills, just came off this big win. Everybody saw them because that was the only game anyone was watching in that 4 p.m. window.
Yeah.
And then the Dolphins have been kind of a tire fire, all season. We haven't seen them in a while. The public is going to load up on the Bills here under 10.
So the public also knows that Dan Campbell off a loss is like 12-0 against the spread, and Jaden Daniels is cooked. And I see Detroit. It looks like it's moving down. I thought I saw 8.5 earlier this week. I'm seeing 8 now. Is this possibly another road favorite of more than a touchdown, getting 80% of the bets?
This is, and this is one where I think I'm on the square side because I like the Lions in this game as
Mm.
well. Just watching that, I am a Vikings fan, so watched
Oh,
that game,
how
and I
wait,
don't
how does
think.
that work?
Yeah, my dad's from Minnesota is
Ah, got it.
the short answer. But I don't think the Vikings are getting probably the credit they deserve for going into Detroit and beating a Detroit team that crushed its other opponents in Detroit. Now this is on the road, but the Commanders were just that game against the Seahawks was over in the first quarter. Like
Mhm.
that was a varsity and JV situation. That defense is really bad. Obviously, Mariota is not Jaden Daniels. We're not sure, I don't think, if Terry McLaurin is playing. They just have kind of had that, the Bill Simmons season from hell. Like it just has been, everyone thought there would be some regression for them. But I think this is a big spot as well for the Lions, and they have the Eagles next week, right? So to your point, could be a trap game. Also, could be a game where they say, hey, we just need to get out of here. Hopefully, rest some
Mhm.
people in the fourth quarter. Like the Lions, I mean, it is pretty amazing. They've won 12 straight games straight up and against the spread off a loss. That's an amazing stat. They're also number four in DVOA. The Commanders are 16th, and the Commanders are 22nd on defense by DVOA. The Lions are also the third best defense. So I just don't. I think the Lions roll. This to me is a great teaser leg. Whether or not you like the Lions 7.5,
Mm.
it is interesting why it's coming down. I would imagine potentially it's some offensive line, whether Penei Sewell is
Yes.
playing. I did just ask a bookmaker before he came on, and he didn't. They hadn't seen sharp action. He didn't know exactly why it was dropping potentially because I saw that too. It was 8.5 before
So,
even
yeah.
earlier today or yesterday.
So both tackles for the Lions missed Wednesday's practice. Both were
Right.
back light practice. Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker. Obviously, that would be significant. This is outdoors, and if we're looking for trap spots next week, Detroit versus the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday Night Football. I'm sure that's a game they have circled on the calendar. Two of the better teams in the NFC. Easy to overlook a dreadful Washington team. I'm not saying I'm hitting the Lions. I'm kind of leaning with you, but I don't know. That Detroit result against the Vikings was alarming. Let me ask you. Do you see? You said sharp action from any
Mhm.
bookmakers. What game has seen the sharpest action so far? And can I guess if it's the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I don't think I had heard
No,
hold on,
okay.
I got too many
Oh, it might
tabs
be
open here.
Arizona actually. Arizona seems to be coming down. Um, it's weird. All these MVP candidates every week that everybody's hyped. Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones, they end up shitting the bed totally. And this is week. Sam Darnold is the MVP leader. He's at the top of everybody's quarterback list. Um, it feels like a dangerous spot against Arizona, which is getting healthier.
Yeah, and this is one again. I think you're going to see. So I like to talk to the odds makers and get kind of that sharp action, which to me is like the next level that hopefully eventually we'll get to in sports betting content because I've never quite understood why people would rather just listen to personality X give out picks, which are just flipping a coin, versus like the bookmakers telling somebody, hey, the people who actually win, they bet this team at this number.
And we move the line.
But that's for a different time. But there was depending on the book, there was actually early sharp action on the Seahawks at 6 to push this to 6.5
Mhm.
at some books. I do think some of that also seeing whether it's going to be Kyler Murray or Jacoby Brissett, and not a lot of movement based off of Jacoby Brissett now being the starter. This is another one where I kind of like the Seahawks, even though they're going to be the public side, even though it's only 6.5. Um, and I'll answer your other question first, just because I'm looking at it now. So I mentioned the Bills, Seahawks, Panthers took some at 4.5 and 5. The Lions one has been all over because that was -3 on the look ahead, and then after the Jaden Daniels injury, went to 7.5. And Sharps took that at one book at 7.5 and 8.5. So again, could be updated with some news today as to why it's dropping as probably offensive lineman, but Sharps early like that. Bucks -2.5, and then some over on the Ravens Vikings as well. I think that total over 47, over 47.5, that total's gone up a couple points. So those were a couple where there were sharp action. I think in terms of the Seahawks as well, they're just kind of a wagon
I
right now. I
gotcha.
think if Buda Baker
Just
comes back, that's also something to look out for. And I think Rashid Shaheed's a great
All right,
addition
there it
for
is.
them
Damn.
as well. Um,
All right, my bad. Hold on. Sorry, I had a little microphone issue. Do you think you
yeah,
could go
no
back
problem.
like 30 seconds maybe?
Sure.
Right after you
Uh,
said Detroit.
let's see.
3 to seven
Oh
and a
yeah,
half, I
yeah.
think.
So Detroit took their line actually opened. The look ahead was -3, went up to 7.5 after the Jaden Daniels injury. Sharps took it at one book at 7.5 and 8.5 to push that up. Now has come back down a little bit. The Bucks -2.5 against the Patriots. That has also had some sharp action, but we haven't seen that line push up yet to 3. And then the Ravens Vikings on that total there was some sharp action at some lower numbers, 47, 47 and a half.
Hmm.
That total has gone up as well. Vikings 7-1 to the over, the Ravens 6-2 to the over. So
Hmm.
a couple of teams that tend to play shootouts, and Sharps felt that that early number was a little low. I think just getting to the Seahawks -6.5. The Cardinals have definitely been playing better with Jacoby Brissett. But I think also it's tough to factor in, this week with the trade deadline. Another game I kind of likes the Eagles +2.5, both that and
Oh.
as a teaser leg. Like we haven't seen these teams with their new additions yet. And I think Rashid Shaheed with that offense that already has JSN, that already has Torrey Horton, um, that's already playing that well with Sam Darnold, my former Viking great quarterback for most of the season. They look great. They're the top team by DVOA. They are number one. And the Cardinals defense is only 23rd. So I think Buda Baker is big, whether or not he plays as well. But to me, the Seahawks right now are just a tough team to bet against. Definitely getting less than a touchdown. I think they're still potentially a little undervalued in the market, just how well they're playing.
All right, Ben Fawkes, Yahoo Sports, great stuff, my man. Thanks for coming on the podcast. I know he puts out great stuff on social media. You got to follow him, guys. And Ben, good to meet you. Congrats on all your success, buddy.
Yeah, thanks. Anytime.